Did you know you can animate a walk cycle with only 8 to 10 drawings? This class will teach you how I animate a walk cycle using the same step-by-step techniques I use when animating my own animated characters. First, we will get your keyframe poses figured out using stick figures. Then we will add in-between drawings to smooth out the animation. Next, we will add some shapes to fill in our characters so that we can do our cleanup drawings. Then I will show you how to add the character's head and why I don't animate the head in the cleanup stage. Finally, we will add colors to our characters. I will also show you some extra tricks, like using green screen with your animation, and making your walk cycle loop as long as you need. These are the techniques I use when animating my characters, and now you can use them to speed up your animation workflow for your characters too. For our class project, you will use the same process I demonstrate in this class to animate a walk cycle with your own character. If you don't have your own character yet, you can animate your favorite cartoon character, or just practice making walk cycles using the stick figure technique. You are welcome to submit a stick figure walk cycle for your class assignment if you don't want to animate a fully colored character. This class is for beginners, but animation fans and professionals are also welcome. The class requirements for this class are a computer or tablet along with the program Rough Animator. If you don't want to use Rough Animator, most 2D animation programs will be able to achieve the same results. A drawing tablet or stylus is recommended for this class as well, but it's not required. If you're not familiar with Rough Animator, don't worry. It's only $5 and it's really easy to learn. Hey there, my name is Patrick Davidson, and I'm an Expat Animator. I work mainly in 2D, or hand-drawn animation. I started animating over 20 years ago now, and I've learned a lot by trial and error. You can avoid a lot of my errors by learning the animation techniques I actually use to complete my projects. Animated projects like the 100-episode web comedy series, Traveling Gringos, or my 22-minute short action film, Trep. These personal projects have helped me find client work ranging from TV commercials to feature films. If you are working alone, like me, you will need to learn more skills than just animation to get your project completed. Skills like character design, scripting, storyboards, compositing, editing, audio work, and more. I can't teach everything in one class, so consider subscribing to my Expat Animator channel. Thanks for joining me today. And now, let's get into this class. Alright, time to get into our walk cycle and how to create one. So let's go ahead and play this one. And this is kind of a 3/4 or half profile shot of one of my characters doing a walk cycle. Now, this is him walking. This is animated on the 3s, meaning I'm not doing a drawing every single frame per second. But it still looks pretty smooth and can pass for workable animation. So let's take a look at another example that I have. And this is more one of my characters walking kind of straight on towards the camera. It's more of a stalk. He's kind of stalking someone than a walk. But you can see it's the same kind of thing here. It's not done on the 1s. I believe this was animated on the 3s, so it's one drawing holds for every 3 frames. And you can see that you can get a pretty good movement with just animated on the 3s with the walk cycle. So that's what we're going to do today, is I'm going to show you how to animate a walk cycle on the 3s. So let's go in. I've created a project here in Rough Animator. And the first thing that I would want to do is we would go File, Import an Image, and that's going to bring in our reference image. I like if you don't have to bring in a reference image here. You could bring it in on a second monitor or something, but let's just have this here so we can keep our scale of our character kind of the same. And then the next phase I like to do, I create a new layer, and I'll call it Stick Figures, because this is where I want to figure out what my animation is going to look like before I start getting into detail, before I start coloring it for sure. I mean, that's like the last stage. So, but again, let's talk a little bit about frame rates. And in this project, I want this walk cycle to be animated over video of myself. And that video is shot at 30 frames per second. So ideally, I want to build my project at 30 frames per second, which it is. But I know that I'm going to animate this on the 3s, meaning I only need to draw 10 drawings per second to get this to work. And we're going to get the whole walk in from start to finish. So he's going to end back up on the same foot he started on in 1 second. So you might think, oh, that's pretty fast, but that's about what a walk cycle works at. So here's a trick that I like to do. I'm going to animate this on the ones here, or just we're doing one frame for now. I will come back and expand these so that they're 3 frames every frame like this later on. But in the meantime, this is kind of how I like to work. I'm going to just keep it on the ones here, and I'm going to go change my frame rate from 30 to 10. Because I'm basically, knowing that I'm animating on the 3s, I only need to draw 1 drawing for every 3 frames. So that's kind of what this trick does for me. Okay, so as you can see, there's a little line here. If I extend this out 1 frame, there it is, 1. That's 1 second of time right there. So you can see if we count these, there's only 10 frames creating that 1 second. So let's take a look, and what I like to do is just do stick figures. And so one thing that I like to do is we'll start with the right foot up, and it's kind of, the heel is touching the floor. And that's a good trick that I learned from Richard Williams' book, is if this is kind of floating in the air, by an inch or 2, it looks weird. There has to be contact to give it some weight. So you want to make sure that that's kind of where I like to start my walk cycles. I mean, you could start it from here, but there's going to be that initial animation, extra animation to get him into the walk cycle. We're just animating the walk cycle, so it can loop and loop and loop. So let's get the legs kind of spread apart like this, and then the arms. So if the right foot is ahead, the left arm would be ahead. So you've got this kind of juxtaposition between the arms and the legs. So kind of remember that. So it's literally stick figures, and I like to do circles for the hands and the feet to try and give me a little bit of where those are going to be in the animation, and I do another circle for the head. And you can see this circle is not even the same. It's not an oval like the shape of the head. It's just giving me kind of where the top of the head is going to be. So if I do my second drawing here, you can see that there's some movement where that right leg, which was in the front here, let me turn this off so I can use my keyboard. So there's the first drawing. This right foot that's in the front is now starting to come back, and now he's firmly planted, almost a straight leg. And then this, what was in the back foot here, is now starting to come forward. And the arms are starting to make their way from front to back, and the way they do that is they kind of go through the center. So if we're just looking at these 2 drawings, back here and here, we're just going back and forth, you can see we've kind of gone from a wide open arms and a wide open legs to almost a closed arms and a closed legs. And that's kind of, we've got, that's the action. And to get from here to here, there's here. So, and then there's here. The more you do this, the easier it'll get, but this is just giving you an idea of how the animation works. So the next frame, we kind of see that left leg kind of lifting up and the arms starting to go their directions. And now the weight here is on the back foot, and the other foot is hanging in the air. And right about here, right here is about our keyframe where he's the most spread apart. His legs and his arms are the most spread apart. So think of these as keyframes where the action is the most extended. The arms aren't going to go any further wide than they are, and the legs aren't either. So with that said, I'm just gonna go through the whole of this and show you. But so that's it. And then from this drawing, if we were to look at the first drawing, they're real similar because they can animate into each other. So when we go to make our loop, and I can go ahead and do that right now, make a cycle. Whoop, did that wrong. I want to add a drawing first. And then I'll make a cycle, and then I need to make that 10 frames long. And now you'll see when we go from this drawing to this drawing, they lead into each other. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove the cycle for now. I need to delete that drawing. There we go. Okay, back to 10 frames. So that's the basic 10 drawings that are going to create our walk cycle. Now, when I'm actually building this, you can animate straightforward like I've just done. That's the straightforward is just one frame after the other. But with the walk cycle, that's kind of hard unless you've done them a lot. So what you want to do really is find these keyframes. So let's go ahead and create a new layer with these same 10 frames, but they're blank. So we will go up to Modify Layers, and we'll duplicate layer timing to blank drawings. And that gives us this blank layer here. It's still called stick figures. I'm going to call this keyframes. Okay. So this is going to help us determine our keyframes. So I like this drawing as a keyframe. I'm just going to copy it. And I'm going to come up to our keyframes layer. And I'm going to paste it. So if we look at our stick figures, let's try and find the keyframes. So I know that on the widest point, I like that. So that to me would be a keyframe. So let's go ahead and grab that guy. I'll copy that. I'm going to come up to our keyframe layer and I'm going to paste him in. Okay. And then if I come back, if I keep looking, I'm looking for keyframes here. That's technically the same drawing as this, just a little bit. Actually, it's a little wider, so I might even make that the keyframe. So let's go ahead and grab that one. And paste that. Okay. Now, I also want a keyframe kind of in the middle of these because of where his arms and his legs are kind of straight. And that's probably right about there. So let me go grab that. Copy that, and I'll paste that. And maybe that's the other straight one here. So let me grab that. Let me grab it from the layer here, copy it, and paste it. Okay. So if I turn the original stick figure layer down, we're going to have a layer with, right now there's 5 drawings out of the 10. And let's see what that looks like if we play that. So he's coming in and out because of the blank drawings, but it still looks like a walk cycle. And that's what the keyframes are doing for us, is they are showing us the key points in the motion. It's enough for our brain to interpret that as a walk cycle, even though there's blank flashes flashing in there. We can still see the motion. And so now we need to go in and draw our in-betweens. And if we turn on our onion skin here, we can see those 2 drawings, and we can just draw a drawing in between. And this gets a little complicated if you don't do it a lot, but you kind of just take it limb by limb. So you say, you know which leg is the front leg, and you know it needs, or the back leg, and you know it needs to start coming up. So it would probably look something like that. And you would draw your in-between like that, in between those 2 drawings. So don't forget to use your onion skin, because that's where it really comes in handy. And another thing to pay attention to on a walk cycle is when the character is the most straight. So let me go to this one here. So he's the most straight. His head is going to be as high as it gets. because he's elongated with the straight legs. And so you want to make sure that the head is a little bit higher than it is, say, where he's full spread out, and see the head's a little bit lower. Some animators will really go up and down with this. To me, it kind of gives it too much of a cartoony look, more than I like. But keep that in mind when you're making a walk cycle, that you do want to have a little bit of up and down. If you remember something like the Flintstones, when they would run, their head wouldn't move at all. It would just be the legs running. And arguable if that is kind of cheating or not, but it's still animation. Just make your own styles, and animation in itself can have styles. So just because they decided not to bob the head up and down on a walk, it doesn't mean that it's not animation. It's just their style that they chose. And part of that choice was because of budget. You got to try and keep the budget down. And it's easier to animate something where the head's not bobbing up and down. It's just less work. So you want to make sure you go through and you animate, you'd fill in these in-between drawings. And once you get your 10 drawings, play it back and make sure, and again, this is still the stick figure phase, so it shouldn't be that much work. But if we play the stick figure, what we're looking at right now is animating on the 3s, even though our project is set up at a frame rate of 10. But we're going to fix that before we're finally done. So let's go above the keyframe. Let's imagine we've drawn our keyframes and we've gotten to this layer here. At this point, what I like to do is I'll make another layer, or I may even draw it on top of the same layer. But let's for this study, let's make a new layer, and I'm going to call it torso. And as I bring this up here, I'll just do it about half here. Or if I pull it all the way up and we play it, just by drawing this like jelly bean shape from his shoulders to his hips, it's starting to fill him out a little bit more. And so I like to do that, and I may even merge the torso and the stick figure layers into one layer. And you want to make sure that the torso bean here, or potato, or whatever shape you've got, it's got a little bit of bounce to it as well, because your shoulders and your hips are kind of going up and down as you're walking. So you can kind of give that bounce at this stage as well. Now, the next stage after I've drawn the torso, I basically would do the cleaned up drawing. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if I bring that up, I'll bring torso opacity down, and I'm going to bring my stick figure opacity down. So you can still see the underlying bones of this character. Now notice I haven't drawn the head yet, and there's a reason for that. But let's go ahead and play this. So now I've drawn the body parts and the shorts and everything at this stage. And I know that the timing of the animation looks okay because we figured that out in the stick figure phase. So that's why I don't recommend going straight into a clean drawing before you've worked out your timing. Figure out your timing in the stick figure phase. But once we've got our body kind of cleaned up and the drawing is to your satisfaction, then what I do is I'll make another layer. So I'll show you how I do it. We want to be on the body cleanup layer, and we click modify layers, and we're going to do a duplicate layer timing to blank drawings. And that's going to give, and then I would call this head, and I'm going to call this head. Well, head copy works. So these are blank drawings right now, as you can see, because they're white. What I like to do is I would draw the head one time, and to just show you this really quick here, I'm just going to grab the head from my reference image here. So let's do this real quick here. And this is real rough. This is not exactly how I work, but let's copy that. Okay, so I've got that copied. And then I'll come back up to the head layer, and at this point I would paste it. So if I do a paste, and now I can move it, and I can place it pretty much where I want it, right? Maybe something about like right there. And then I just click off of it, and I've placed my head right where I want it. And the reason I do this is because if I find that if I draw the head every single frame, it gets the face gets a little warped. Like the nose bounces around on me, and the eyes kind of go wacky, or the ear, and I just don't like the look. So this is a trick I've come up with, and maybe it's cheating a little bit, but you know, I'm not having any animation in the face when he's walking, so it works for me. And you know, I'm showing you tricks that I use. So we would go to the next frame, and if I hit paste again, I just grab that same face, and this time just place it on the body where it needs to go. So this is probably, and if I click off, there, it's placed it. So if I go from one to the other, there's a little bit of movement in the head. And we're going to use that, the ball that we've drawn here, as a guidance of where to place that head. So I'm going to go ahead and do this a few more times. And see, now he's dropped down a little bit. Although the head probably, let's see, place that. Yeah, I'm not getting exactly the bounce on the head like I was talking about, but this is the process I go through to animate my walk cycle. And let's go ahead and paste that, bring it over, drop it where it needs to go on the neck. Kind of line it up with the head and the shoulders where it looks right. You know, you don't want to go too low because he looks kind of hunched back or whatever. So, and I just go through this, and I've already done this, so I'm going to just go up here and pull the opacity up on this layer. So this head layer. So if I could play this right now, and let's watch what the animation looks like. So you can see there's a little bit of head bounce in there. And that bounce may or may not be, I might want to adjust that a little bit, but that's the process. And this way I don't have, you know, like I say, the nose kind of bouncing all over the place and getting warped within the walk cycle. He kind of looks like himself as he's walking. So once I've got this stage, the last thing I need to do is basically color it in. So I would go through and just drop the opacity off on these layers I'm not needing anymore. And for body cleanup, instead of coloring this layer, I like to duplicate that layer and rename it colors. And then if I make a mistake in the coloring phase, I can always go back to my black and white drawings here and start over without having to redraw. So that's the reason that I like to duplicate the cleanup inks. And at this point, you know, you'd grab your paint bucket tool and start, you know, grab your colors of your character and start filling stuff in. And once you've got that process done, then, so I've already got my colors layer here, that's already done. So let's go take a look at that. And I think colors has the head on it also, so let's pull that up. Yeah, I merged my colors with my head layer previously. So then I've got everything on one layer, colored. And, you know, I may even actually call this final or something like that, because that's got the colors and the head combined. But I like to keep all of these layers in case I need to come back at a stage. Especially after you've viewed your animation, sometimes you miss something in the stick figure phase where the animation doesn't look quite right. Well, you can just go back and grab, you know, the right drawing from the right layer instead of having to reproduce it every time. So we've got our final. Let's go ahead and play this. And there's our walk cycle. Here's a couple more tricks. Now he's actually walking on threes. But here's the trick. If I were to export this right now, remember I've got my project set up at 10 frame rate. Well, to make this work with my video editor after I export it, I need to switch this back to 30 frames. So let's do this right now. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my final here, and I'm going to start adding 2 frames to each frame. So it went from one drawing to now it's holding that one drawing for 3 frames. So I'm just going to do this real quick on every single drawing. And once we're, once we've got this done, you'll see, because now we're at 30 frames per second, here's that 1 second line. So if I make this one more frame, there it is. See the 1? So we're right at that 1 second mark. And let's go ahead and play that. And it should look the exact same. There he is. So now that my animation is ready for exporting into my video editor, what I like to do is one last thing, is I like to color the background with this RGB green. And this green is, it's R of 0, G of 177, and B of 64. And here's the hex color if you're looking for that. But what this is, I just kind of save it in my palette here. And I'll fill the background with that color. And this is like a green screen background on my character. Because right now, Rough Animator doesn't export this. If you want transparency, you have to export as a PNG sequence. And I like to edit in Final Cut Pro, which doesn't work that great with PNG sequences. So I like to export as a QuickTime video. And I'll just knock out this green with the green screen effect in my Final Cut Pro editing. So that's kind of the trick. So I'll just export this as a QuickTime video and, you know, save it with the name that you want. And then that QuickTime movie that it created is ready to be imported into your video editor. So at this stage, I want to create a cycle because I want this to loop for 10 seconds of video. So if I go to my last frame here, I'm going to add a drawing, add after, and if I'm selected on this, I come up here and I hit make cycle. Now, as you can see, it's only choosing these first two, or the last two drawings in my cycle. So see over here my tool options, and if I add to this number, you can see it's grabbing these extra frames. So I'm going to make sure that I'm grabbing all 10 frames in my cycle. And now I can extend the frame duration of my cycle here. Now I know that 270 is going to get me to where I need to go. So if I type that in and hit enter, I pull back here on my horizontal timeline, horizontal zoom. There's 9 seconds, there's 10 seconds. So that's giving me a full 10-second looping walk cycle that I can use for video with the green screen background that I can easily knock out in Final Cut Pro. So let's go ahead and export that as a QuickTime video. And I'm just going to call this final. And we'll export that out. And we'll take a quick look at that before we're done. Now, once this is done rendering, at this point I would like to save my work within Rough Animator. So I'm just going to come up here and hit save. Okay, and we can hide Rough Animator. Oop, there we go. Here's our final file and of our walk cycle, and you can see here it's 10 seconds long. And there we go. So I hope that you learned something in how to create your own walk cycles and how you can do so with only 8 to 10 drawings, depending on your frame rate that you choose. If we were to animate this with 24 frames per second, 8 drawings would have been enough to get us the same animating on the 3s that we chose. But again, I'm working with video, so I need 30 frames per second. And in that case, to animate on the 3s, I need it to be 10 drawings to get a full cycle, a walk cycle. And once you bring this into your video editor, you can have them walk across the screen, and you can edit that stuff within your video editor. So hopefully you found this helpful and learned something about walk cycles and even frame rates today. Thanks.
For our class project, you will be animating your own walk cycle. You can animate it with your own character, a favorite cartoon character of yours, or just using a stick figure. Try to make the walk cycle complete within 1 second time, or 30 frames. You can accomplish this with only 10 drawings if you animate on 3s. Remember, that's one drawing holding for 3 frames before the next drawing begins. If you want,
You can color your character, and you can even make him loop the walk cycle for up to 10 seconds. Export your final animation to a QuickTime video. That's it! You'll soon have your own animated character that you can use and reuse in your future animation projects. Hang on there 1 second. I was just telling Patrick that I thought it would be a good idea if he provided a worksheet to help you draw your own walk cycle. Of course he agreed with me, so here it is. You can download your own copy of this JPEG, and here's another tip. If you want a smoother walk cycle, try animating it on 2s by adding in some more in-between frames. And if you want it to be as smooth as possible, animate it on 1s. Patrick has another class here on YouTube that goes more in depth on this concept, called Understanding Frame Rates in 2D Animation. So make sure to check it out if you need to. That's all from me. See you around. Congratulations on completing this class. But we're not done quite yet. Let's recap what we've just learned. Today, we learned how to create a walk cycle using only 10 drawings. We also learned how to make that walk cycle loop for 10 seconds. And now you know how to make it loop as long as you need. We also learned how using stick figures helps us get our walk cycle looking good before we try and add the detail to our characters. By adding layers on top of our stick figure, we were able to add a torso and a cleaned up drawings layer. By duplicating our cleaned up drawings, we were able to color our character without worrying about messing up the original line art. And by adding another layer, we were able to copy and paste the head onto our character. This step helps keep the face looking consistent throughout the walk cycle. We also saw a few tricks I like to use, like adding a green screen background to the character. This helps knock out the background if you like to edit in Final Cut Pro, like I do. And by using the Make Cycle button in Rough Animator, we were able to extend the walk cycle for 10 seconds. I hope you were able to learn something today to help you make your own animations. This has been Patrick Davidson. See you next time. If you found this useful, click the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Click this video for more animation tips. Leave any questions you have in the comments below. Thanks for watching and keep on animating.